Khushboo, we are in a very interesting time where we have seen the whole geopolitics play out over the especially last 1 month. Energy used to be a background cost generally for an industry, for a company generally. And while India is now importing 85% of its crude, prices have swung and we have seen the changes happening. From a conversation that you are having with industry leaders, what has really changed in terms of how they are thinking about energy? Have you found any change in their tone?
Well, thanks, Sudipto, and good evening, everyone. Energy has been a significant cost, especially as far as process industries, manufacturing industries are concerned, from textiles to steel to pharma, across industries, right? Question was, get the the best cost of energy, right? Now, as we go along, what's changed is sustainability is in focus. It's not just about compliance, it's also become about competitiveness. You know, you have export pressures, you have the India carbon credit scheme, which is launching this year. So now it's actually started to hit the P&L. Mm-hmm. And that's where the conversation has changed. When I talk about Thermax and TOESL that I lead, we started thinking about ESG way back in 2009. Okay. And we said that what do the customers or the industry need? We said that they'll be moving to energy transition. They already have assets on the ground, right? So we thought of this model to say, let's do an end-to-end solution, right from investment to life cycle operations. So think about technology, think about design, think about the risk as far as fuel supply is concerned. And at the end of it, ensuring that the customers have availability for their manufacturing process. And I think that today has worked well and is getting more and more traction today.
Interesting. But you know, much of the energy transition narrative is around electricity. And what we find is sectors like textile and chemicals and pharma, they depend heavily on thermal energy. Are we underestimating this part of the transition?
You've hit the nerve, Sudipto. So when it comes to energy, 50% comes from the industrial businesses, okay, right? As far as India in energy need is concerned. And of that 80% is actually thermal. Only 20% is coming from electricity.
Interesting.
So to replace that thermal energy with green, efficient energy is the need of the hour. And hence you see integrated solutions as far as green steam and heat is concerned, waste heat recovery is concerned, cooling, power, and even water conservation solution, ETPs and the likes. So we cannot ignore the thermal component of energy, and I think that is the need of the hour to address that. And do that in-house, do that with self-reliance as far as India is concerned.
For the benefit of our audience, would you like to take us through the economics of it? I mean to say, here you are coming in as a third-party thing who's trying to help them get thermal energy, right? And you are also using bioenergy. You're replacing fossil fuel. How does the economic work here? What is the economics, unit economics, how does it work?
Sure. So it varies, right? It depends on which kind of fuel that you're using to currently substitute. So if we are substituting, say, natural gas and furnace oil, largely depending on imports, but also very high and costly fuel, the agro-based steam and heat fares much, much better. You'd probably get a payback within a year if you're switching to green energy. And I don't talk just about economics, but also about certainty. You know, what's happening, like we talked about volatility to certainty, that means you don't have to depend on anybody else for your manufacturing process. Now the hard-to-abate segments where you're using coal still, there is a cost arbitrage still. But that's again fluctuating, right? Depending on whether you have Indonesian coal available or not. So there is a cost to sustainability, but like CBAM and export pressures coming in, the carbon trading schemes, I think they will focus on more and more low carbon utilities, and I think the industry would benefit from it.
But the fact that, you know, these are very mission critical processes, you know, like steam, heat are all mission critical. Why will they get sort of do you find it challenging? Why should they get an external partner do it for them? and they need to uptime of, I think, what, 99% uptime? Is that what you need? So isn't there a risk out there?
Right, exactly. That's the reason why you would want to trust an expert that does not just understand technology, but also understand the volatility when it comes to fuel, still guaranteeing an output which is wanting for the process, right? Hence this model, right? Now, when it comes to industry, we have the industrial demand. We also have the clean policy guidelines. And now we also have the surplus fuel. So when we talk about agro residue, today we have 125 million tons of agro residue available, which is surplus, only a fraction of which is being utilized.
Okay.
But the criticality lies there is not in terms of surplus agricultural residue, but how do you scale that? How do you ensure that you integrate that? How do you ensure that you make it available, right? That's where the challenge is. And I think companies like us, which aggregate 3,000 tons a day of biomass, have kind of understood it while doing, while the decade that we've been into.
But the model that you take is a BOO model, which is like build, operate, and
own and operate.
Own and operate.
Yes.
Could you take us through that? Because it's very interesting, because you are putting in money in your clients'
manufacturing process, essentially.
Yeah. So can you take us through that process, please?
Yes, we believe in asset-light ownership, right? We believe in transferring the risk to the expert. And that's why we came up with saying, we will invest, we will deliver you the utility on a rupees per unit basis, right? So while, sustainability does not have to compete with growth, right? So the dollars or rupees saved on utilities can go back to the manufacturing process. So what we come and do is we'll design, engineer the system for you, we'll invest the capital, we'll take the supply chain risk as far as aggregation is fuel is concerned, we'll deliver the utility to you and the uptime to you while you focus on your manufacturing process. So this has gained more and more attraction, like I said, because today the customers are not looking at greenfield projects, they're looking at transitioning their brownfield projects to greener utilities, and that's where the investment helps.
But tell me one thing, like if you have to distill it down for companies still evaluating this option of whether they should, make the transition or they should delay it, because there's a risk to transition, and not doing a transition also a risk. So how does the balance play out?
I think proof is in the pudding. What's happening today, nobody had expected this to happen. So I think more and more customers realize that it's inevitable that you have to move to greener technologies, greener solutions. Better do it today than later. Later, because then it will come at a compliance cost. It is already, as far as export competitiveness in textiles is concerned, they're already thinking seriously about it. So my take would be do it now than later.
Finally, from a regulatory perspective, what are the key things that will help you move the needle?
Couple of things. One, the clear guidelines and directives, like we have now the carbon trading scheme that will get operationalized. So faster utilization, operationalization of the carbon trading scheme, which then benefits the low carbon utilities. Second, on the agricultural sector, giving financial incentives to bricketing, processing agents, pelleting agents that will help the working capital outflow. And third, I think industrial clusters. When you're looking at industrial corridors, looking at community-based utilities, and hence a larger, even if you're looking at MSMEs and industrial corridors, per unit might be a smaller requirement. When you look at it from a cluster standpoint, it gives the economies of scale. So I think government trying to promote that will help.
Any policy interventions that you feel that, anything particular?
We have the SATAT on the bio-CNG scheme. We have now the carbon trading scheme. We just want to make sure that it becomes operational. The financial assistance today on the processing units of biomass isn't there. I think that intervention will certainly help.
The carbon markets, as we mentioned, we spoke about it earlier, just about going to start in a few months' time. Is it something like what demonetization did to the UPI? Is that type of moment for you? Because when the carbon markets opens up, it also makes your customers or prospective customers more conscious of the need that they should decarbonize?
Right. I think the good thing is it's already implemented world over.
Okay.
It's now getting implemented in India, and I've been in a few policy discussions where they are implementing the good from all the, and they're not just inventing it at grassroots, right? So they've taken what is implemented and the best of those practices to be implemented in India. The customers are already aware of it because they're in European countries, there are already mechanisms. There are also, very interestingly, global giants like Microsoft, Google, coming to India to kind of get carbon credits, right, for their global manufacturing units. So I think the awareness is there, and this is only going to help if we execute it well.
Interesting. I'm sorry we've run out of time, but it's a lovely discussion to, we should continue it offline, I guess.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.